All right, so get ready, because today we're diving deep into some pretty wild natural history stuff. You guys have sent us some crazy material on prehistoric creatures, and honestly, it's stranger than fiction.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking like exploding whales, elephant skulls that people thought were Cyclops, and even hippos that basically sweat sunscreen.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, all these bizarre events and creatures really show how powerful adaptation and survival can be in the natural world.
Okay, so let's unpack this. First up is a story that's, well, kind of shocking and kind of funny at the same time.
Yeah.
The exploding whale of Florence, Oregon. This happened back in 1970.
Right.
A 14-meter sperm whale washes ashore,
Wow.
and the smell alone is already a huge problem. But then, get this, the authorities decide to blow it up?
Yeah, the thinking back then was, well, we know it was flawed now, but they thought that dynamite would be the fastest way to get rid of the carcass. They figured it would just break down into smaller pieces.
But that's obviously not what happened,
Yeah.
right? This is where it gets really interesting.
Oh, no, not at all. It was a disaster. The explosion sent blubber and flesh flying everywhere. It was raining down on the beach. One poor car even got completely flattened by a giant chunk of whale blubber.
Oh my gosh.
And the stench. Let's just say it stuck around for weeks.
I can only imagine. So what actually causes a whale to explode like that? I mean, scientifically speaking.
It all comes down to decomposition. When bacteria break down a whale's organs, they release gases like methane, carbon dioxide, and ammonia. And this creates a buildup of pressure inside.
By a natural pressure cooker.
Exactly. And in this case, the dynamite basically acted like a trigger, releasing all that pressure.
Wow. What a lesson learned. So let's say, hypothetically, you come across a beached whale. What should you do instead of, grabbing the dynamite?
The most important thing is to contact the experts, like marine biologists and wildlife officials. They know how to handle it safely and responsibly. They might do a necropsy to figure out why the whale died, or they might bury it on a remote beach to let it decompose naturally.
That makes way more sense. Okay, while we're talking about whales, let's talk about a common myth. Some people think that whales beach themselves because of pollution, or even, like, as a form of suicide. Is there any truth to that?
There's actually no scientific evidence to support those ideas. While human activities and pollution definitely impact marine life, they don't explain why whales beach themselves. The reasons are still kind of a mystery. But scientists think it could be things like navigational errors, changes in tides, or underlying health issues.
So there's still so much we don't know about these amazing creatures. But it's wild. Even though it was a disaster, the exploding whale of Florence has become weirdly famous.
It really has. It's like an internet sensation. There are websites, memes, even a memorial park dedicated to it. It just shows that sometimes even our biggest blunders can have a lasting impact.
It's true. Speaking of lasting impacts, let's move on to a creature that has captured imaginations for centuries. The Cyclops.
Ah, yes, the one-eyed giant from Greek mythology. It's amazing how a mythical creature can have such a long-lasting presence in our culture.
I know, right? And for a while, people actually believed they'd found proof of Cyclops. They found these skulls with a single large opening in the forehead, and it seemed to confirm the myth.
Right, but those skulls didn't belong to mythical giants. They actually belonged to a real prehistoric elephant called Dinotherium.
Wait, so they thought elephant skulls were Cyclops skulls? How did that even happen?
Well, the large nasal opening in elephant skulls, where their trunk was anchored, was mistaken for a single eye socket. It's easy to see how that anatomical quirk, combined with the desire to believe in something extraordinary, fueled the legend.
Wow, what a case of mistaken identity. But there's more to this story, right? What about those smaller Cyclops skulls they found? I remember reading that people thought they belonged to baby Cyclops.
That's another interesting twist. Those smaller skulls actually belong to dwarf elephants. Specifically, Paleoloxodon falconeri. They were found on the island of Sicily.
Dwarf elephants. A new one for me.
They're a great example of island dwarfism. It's when limited resources on islands lead to the evolution of smaller species.
So the baby Cyclops were just miniature elephants. That's incredible. And the fact that these dwarf elephants lived on islands in the Mediterranean where the Cyclops myth came from adds another layer to the story.
Exactly. It's like reality itself was helping to keep the myth alive. Imagine those ancient sailors finding these dwarf elephant skulls and thinking they were the remains of Cyclops. It's easy to see how the legend would take hold.
It's like a real-life detective story trying to separate fact from fiction. Speaking of strange creatures, our next topic takes us to the African savanna. We're going to meet a hippopotamus that seems to be sweating blood.
The sun-screaming hippo. That's an image that will definitely grab your
I
attention.
can imagine. Seeing a hippo seemingly oozing blood, that must have been a pretty freaky sight.
It looks like blood, but it's actually a special secretion from the hippo's mucus glands.
So it's not blood, not sweat. What is this red fluid, and why do they produce it?
Researchers have found that it contains a red pigment called hipposudoric acid. And get this secretion acts like natural sunscreen. It absorbs UV rays and protects the hippo's skin from that harsh African sun.
Wait, hippos need sunscreen. I always thought their thick skin was enough.
It's actually pretty sensitive, especially since they spend so much time in water. The hipposudoric acid creates a barrier to prevent sunburn and keep their skin moist.
Wow. Nature is full of surprises. But there's more to it, right? It does more than just protect them from the sun.
You got it. This fluid also helps regulate their body temperature. It's like a cooling agent. And there's even more. It has antibacterial and insect repellent properties.
No way. This hippo secretion is like a multi-purpose wonder product, like nature's sunscreen, moisturizer, A&D bug spray, all in one. That's amazing. This deep dive is already blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Who knew there were so many fascinating stories behind all these bizarre events?
There's always more to discover. And with each new discovery, we get a better understanding of the incredible web of life that connects us all. And it's amazing how those adaptations often go unnoticed until you really start to look closer.
Like nature's always coming up with these clever solutions for survival. And that brings us to a perfect example, one that really showcases the power of evolution. The teeth and bite force of the Tyrannosaurus rex.
Ah, yes, the tyrant lizard king, one of the most iconic predators to ever walk the earth. And its teeth, well, they were more than just for eating. They were incredibly effective weapons.
I've always been fascinated by T-Rex teeth. They're massive. Some were over a foot long, weren't they?
That's right. And they weren't just long, they were thick and serrated too. Almost like steak knives designed to tear through flesh and bone.
It's hard to even imagine the kind of force those jaws must have had.
Scientists estimate that a T-Rex could bite down with a force of over 12,000 pounds per square inch. That's like having a pickup truck sitting on your fingertip.
Ouch. No wonder they were the top of the food chain. But those teeth weren't just for show, right? They must have had special features that made them so effective.
Absolutely. Their conical shape helped them penetrate deep into flesh and bone, while the serrations acted like tiny saws, ripping and tearing with every bite.
So it wasn't just about killing their prey. They could crush bones and get to the nutrient-rich marrow inside. It's like nature's ultimate multi-tool. But did T-Rex teeth ever wear down or break? How did they deal with that?
That's another fascinating adaptation. T-Rex teeth were constantly being replaced throughout their lives.
So they didn't have to worry about losing a tooth in a fight, because a new one would just grow in.
Exactly. New teeth were always growing in to replace any that were worn out or damaged, which means the T-Rex always had a fresh set of weapons at the ready.
That's incredible. It's like having a built-in dental plan. It's amazing how evolution has fine-tuned these adaptations over millions of years.
It really shows the power of natural selection. The T-Rexes with the strongest teeth and the most powerful bites were the ones that survived, and then they passed those traits down to their offspring.
And those genes led to the evolution of this ultimate predator, the T-Rex. It's a creature so perfectly adapted for its role that we're still captivated by it millions of years later. It makes you wonder what other incredible adaptations we might find as we uncover more fossils.
Every new fossil discovery has the potential to change how we understand prehistoric life. It's like putting together a giant puzzle, and each new piece reveals a little more about the amazing history of life on our planet.
From the incredible power of a T-Rex bite to that sunscreen adaptation in hippos, it seems like every part of nature has a story to tell, and they all point to the resilience and adaptability of life.
It's humbling to realize that we humans are just a small part of this vast and interconnected web of life, a web that goes back billions of years.
And that sense of connection, that appreciation for how everything is connected, that's something we can carry with us as we explore the world around us.
Absolutely. It's a perspective that can shape our actions and inspire us to be better stewards of our planet.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling inspired to go explore nature with a fresh sense of wonder. But before we wrap up this amazing deep dive, there's one last adaptation we need to uncover. And it involves a creature that's both familiar and surprisingly fascinating. The hippopotamus.
Ah, yes, the gentle giants of African rivers. But as we've already seen, there's more to them than meets the eye.
You're right. Remember that sun screaming phenomenon we talked about? The reddish fluid that hippos secrete? Well, it turns out that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to their adaptations.
It really is. What's remarkable is their ability to hold their breath for so long. They can stay underwater for up to 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Seriously? That's incredible. I can barely hold mine for a minute. How do they do that?
It's all because of a few physiological adaptations. Their large lungs let them take in a lot of oxygen, and their heart rate slows down a lot when they're underwater to conserve that oxygen.
So they're like underwater yogis, slowing down their metabolism to stay submerged longer. But there's got to be more to it than just big lungs and a slow heart rate, right?
You're right. Hippos also have a special adaptation in their blood. It allows them to store more oxygen than most other mammals. It gives them an extra boost when they're underwater.
Wow. It's like they have a built-in scuba tank. But why do they need to hold their breath for so long in the first place?
Well, hippos spend a huge amount of their time in water. They graze on aquatic plants and stay cool in the heat. They even give birth underwater.
Wait, hold on. They give birth underwater. You're kidding? I can't even imagine how they manage that.
It's just another example of their incredible adaptations. The calves are born with this instinctive ability to swim to the surface to take their first breath. And the mothers are fiercely protective. They defend their young from any potential threats.
It's amazing how these creatures that seem so bulky and awkward are so well suited to life in the water. From holding their breath for so long to giving birth underwater, they're full of surprises.
And those surprises show how important it is to never underestimate the power of evolution. It's always shaping and reshaping life, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
And it really is amazing how these creatures that seem so out of place are actually perfectly at home in their environment.
That is, isn't it?
And that reminds me of another thing about hippos that I've always found interesting. Their teeth. I mean, they're totally unique in the animal kingdom.
Yeah, hippopotamus teeth are pretty fascinating, especially their canines and incisors. They're huge, and they actually keep growing throughout their entire life.
Continuously growing, so they never stop getting longer.
That's right. It's an adaptation that makes sure their teeth can handle all that wear and tear, from grazing on tough plants and using them for defense.
So they're like self-sharpening knives.
Kinda, yeah. As they graze and grind their teeth, that constant growth keeps the edges nice and sharp.
Wow, that's so cool. But all that growth must mean some pretty impressive chompers.
It does.
How big can hippo teeth actually get?
The lower canines can be over a foot long, and the incisors aren't much shorter. Combine that with their powerful jaw muscles, and you've got a bite force you don't want to mess with.
I can imagine. But their teeth are mainly for grazing, right?
Yeah.
So why do they need such a powerful bite?
Well, hippos are mostly herbivores, but
Yeah.
their teeth and bite force are also a powerful defense. They're really territorial, and they use their teeth to protect themselves and their young.
So those teeth are definitely not just for show.
No way.
They're crucial for survival.
Exactly. Their teeth are like a perfect example of how evolution gives creatures multiple tools to thrive in their environment.
I see what you mean. We've covered so much ground today.
Yeah.
Exploding whales, Cyclops skulls, those amazing adaptations of hippos. We've explored some pretty wild and fascinating parts of the natural world.
We have.
And it all comes back to the power of adaptation and survival. How life finds a way, no matter what.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
You know, what I find really inspiring about all this is that it reminds us how much there's still out there to discover. Every corner of our planet has secrets waiting to be uncovered.
I agree. And who knows what other incredible adaptations are still out there. Maybe some of them will totally change how we understand biology or rewrite the textbooks.
You never know. And that's why it's so important to keep exploring, to keep asking questions, and to keep sharing what we find with the world. Who knows what amazing things we might discover if we just keep looking. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. And remember, stay curious.